The following story is true.
There was nothing that Joe loved more than Halloween. Joe's year did not begin on January 1st. It began on the 1st of November, and each year Joe anxiously awaited the return of his favorite month. Once October hit, he savored the season's festivities. He decorated his apartment as if to appease the Halloween gods. He drank more cider than anyone. He ate more caramel apples than anyone. Every night he watched a different horror film. However, his favorite tradition was picking the perfect pumpkin.
Year after year, finding the right pumpkin was a struggle. He never quite found the perfect one. Sometimes the bottom was misshapen, other times the stem was too short or the size was too small. Frequently one side of the pumpkin looked nice, but the other side did not. It was Joe's mission to find the perfect pumpkin, and one year he did.
Joe brought the pumpkin home and placed it on the center of the room. He treasured it like nothing he ever possessed, and was almost apprehensive about carving a face into the perfect specimen. It was the middle of the night. Joe lay asleep when he thought he heard something. "Joe! Wake up, Joe!" Joe looked around his apartment. He opened the front door. He looked out the window, but there was no one. "Over here, Joe." Joe turned around. "Closer. Come here." Joe approached his pumpkin, astonished. It was speaking to him. "What are you?" Joe asked the pumpkin. "I've just woken up." "How did you know my name?" "I just knew it." "How are you able to speak?" "I don't know. Can't other pumpkins talk?" No, they can't." Joe was amazed. He studied his pumpkin with wonder and curiosity. "Do you know where you came from?" "I feel like I've been in blackness for a long time." "Do you have a name?" "No, I don't." "What should I call you then?"
Joe named the pumpkin Randall.
And the company of Randall, the talking pumpkin, was most welcome to Joe. For once, he had someone to share the festivities of the season with, but the pumpkin did not always feel at home. Joe asked him if there was anything that he could do to help.
It's very hard for me to see anything. I wish I could see the world around me. Could you carve me eyes so I can see?
Joe obliged and carved Randall 2 eyes. When the eye holes were finished, a glow shined from within the pumpkin. It started out small, then grew into a bright light. "I can see! I can see!" Joe took Randall around the town. They watched people. They walked through nature trails. They watched the trees and animals. They laid down as the sun set and watched the stars and moon appear in the sky. At the end of the day, Joe showed Randall his favorite horror films. Randall especially enjoyed the violent movies. The next day, Randall asked Joe for another favor during breakfast. "This food looks so delicious. Could you carve me a mouth so I could taste?" Joe cooked all sorts of food for Randall to try. They ate popcorn, caramel apples, burgers, pizza, pie. Joe took Randall to a donut shop so they could buy a donut. On the way home, they passed by a dead animal on the side of the road. "Stop! What is that, Joe?" Randall asked. "It's roadkill. It's an animal that someone ran over with their car." "Can I try it?" Joe thought the request odd, but a pumpkin could not get sick, so he let Randall eat the dead animal. The next day, Randall noticed Joe smelling a candle. Randall asked him what he was doing. Joe explained that he was admiring the scent of the candle. "I wish I could smell things. Could you carve me a nose, Joe?"
Joe carved Randall a nose, and for the rest of the day they went around smelling new things. Candles, trees, food, flowers.
The two were walking past a cemetery that evening. Randall asked Joe to stop. "What is that scent, Joe?" Randall asked. Joe didn't smell anything. "What scent? You don't smell anything? The aroma. It's so strong." "Where is it coming from?" Joe asked. "By those stones. Walk over there." Joe carried Randall into the cemetery. "What is this place?" Randall asked. "It's a cemetery. This is where people are buried when they die. What can you smell?" "I don't know, but it smells amazing."
Joe was frightened.
The next day, Randall asked Joe for ears so he could hear things better. Joe obliged, and the two spent the day listening to music and the sounds of the city.
When the two arrived home, Randall spotted Joe's neighbor Jane.
"Who's that?" Randall asked. "That's my neighbor," Joe responded. "Could you hurt her, Joe?" "Why would you say that?" "Hurt her, Joe." Joe was horrified. "Randall, stop saying that." Randall responded, "I was joking." Joe dreamt that night, but it was unlike any dream he had ever experienced. It was more akin to a vision. At first, Joe heard a voice. "Nyarlathotep, the growling chaos. I am the last. I will tell the audience void." He dreamt of abysses between the stars. He dreamt of Egyptian cities, a slender, sinister being who had lived on the earth far before man, and of the large crowds that followed him throughout centuries. Joe awakened. He stood in the kitchen drenched in sweat. Randall sat not much farther from him. Joe asked him how he had moved from the couch. "You moved me, Joe," Randall said, "while you were sleepwalking." Joe put Randall back on the couch and returned to bed. Images from his dream still lingered in his mind, along with the phrase,
Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. I am the last. I will tell the audience void. Joe struggled to return to sleep. He tossed and turned, when at 4 a.m. he believed he saw the most bizarre sight.
Through the crack of his door, Joe saw Randall move on his own. Joe was weary of Randall the following day. He insisted that what he saw was a dream, but part of him wasn't convinced. And there was the symbol. That odd, hideous, eldritch symbol that appeared mysteriously in the dark corners of his residence without warning. Joe was certain his eyes weren't deceiving him, and although he couldn't prove it, he was sure Randall was responsible. Joe tried his best to remain pleasant towards Randall. He was certain that expressing any unease would only create problems. This was, of course, before the incident. Joe lay asleep. He heard a glass shatter in the living room. Joe cracked his bedroom door open. He heard shuffling and a hushed, urgent mumbling. Joe crept down the hallway. Light poured from the open front door. Candy pieces and Halloween decorations littered the floors. Joe stepped out into the living room. The man wore no shirt. His pale skin shined in the light. He did not move, and he stood before the window, holding something that Joe couldn't see. Joe couldn't see his face either, but he could hear the man's raspy breathing. "Sir," Joe croaked out. The intruder did not appear to hear Joe. He continued quickly muttering. Joe did not want to come any closer to the man, but he took another step. "Sir, this is my home. What are you doing here?" The man did not respond. Joe stepped again. "Sir?" Before Joe could finish, the man spoke. "And at the last from inner Egypt came the strange dark one to whom the fellows bowed, silent and lean and cryptically proud, and wrapped in fabrics red as sunset flame. Throngs pressed around, frantic for his commands, but leaving could not tell what they had heard, while through the nations spread the awestruck word. That wild beast followed him and licked his hands. Soon from the sea a noxious birth began, forgotten lands with weedy spires of gold. The ground was cleft and mad of rollers rolled, down on the quaking citadels of man. Then crushing what he had chanced to mold and play, the idiot's chaos blew earth's dust away." Joe feared to speak. He feared to move. He pictured himself running through the front door. "I found him, you see," the man spoke to Joe. "I found my master, and he will not leave me again." The man slowly turned. On his chest was the symbol. On his face was a smile. In his hands, a knife. Police were called about a noise complaint coming from Joe's apartment on 1648 Whitford Lane. They arrived to the scene to find the front door flung open. In regards to any irregularities, the officers reported an unusual amount of Halloween decorations and signs of skirmish. The officers made their way through the living room and into the bedroom. Huddling in the corner was Joe. In the middle of the room was a body with a face so slashed and mutilated that the face was unrecognizable, and in the hands of the body was a dirty pumpkin. The police took Joe in. They examined the body. They took the pumpkin and the knife as evidence. Luckily for Joe, the police discovered the man was a wanted murderer. He was the leader of a local cult that worshipped a pumpkin god. They performed rituals and claimed to summon demons that caused supernatural occurrences. Joe asked what the pumpkin god was named. They replied, Nyarlathotep.
Joe told the police how the man broke into his home, how he repeated some poem, then slashed his own face. His story was published in the Sunday paper, and he was given back his pumpkin.
After the incident, Randall did not speak. The light from inside the pumpkin ceased to glow. Joe knew he had to get rid of it. Regardless, he thought it a shame to throw away such an interesting specimen without exploring one last curiosity. He had to know if there was anything more than pumpkin seeds and guts beneath Randall's skin. Joe took Randall's remains to the woods and buried them. Joe felt better once his pumpkin was gone and scrubbed his apartment clean of this strange symbol. Although Halloween was quickly approaching, he was apprehensive about purchasing another pumpkin. He continued to drink cider every day, but it didn't taste as sweet. He watched horror films every night, but Joe didn't scare as easily. He couldn't shake the feeling that Randall wasn't truly gone. Everywhere Joe went, he thought he'd caught glimpses of his old friend. Once or twice he thought he spotted that symbol. And even more strange, Joe began sleepwalking. Rather than go out on Halloween, he opted to stay in and handed out candy. It was a quiet Halloween. The night was calm, and when all the candy was given away, he turned off the lights, locked all the doors, and went to bed. Joe slept with the creeping fear that the followers of Randall's cult existed. They were out there, and perhaps the cult had heard about how he had stopped their leader, and perhaps they had been watching him ever since, and perhaps the cult would pay an unexpected visit to his home that night on Halloween. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. I am the last. I will tell the audience void.